Well, hello everybody. It's Chef Andrea and I'm here with Q&A with Chef A, the podcast. If you are with me, I say thank you so very much for being a podcast subscriber. It means the world to me and I hope you're enjoying this experiment as we are as well. I think it's been a lot of fun and I've gotten some beautiful feedback. So thank you guys very, very much. Today we're talking about cheese. So what I'm going to talk about now, we talked a little bit about how to kind of bring cheeses together, maybe serving cheeses from a specific country or region of origin, or maybe picking a milk varietal, or maybe picking a combo, as I showed you in one. Here's the thing that I get a lot of questions about too, is how do I know what to serve with cheeses? And there's kind of two parts to this that I'm going to dive into for you guys. So let me start with the fact that my studio sommelier, who was in charge of our wine education and our wine club program here, Christoph Bauer, is honestly who really taught me about wines. I knew some things, and I had certainly taken some classes and sat through some tastings and done some seminars when I was at ACF conventions and things like that. But the truth is that Christoph is the one who really opened my eyes to some concepts about wine pairing that I did not understand until I had done some of his education. And I'm going to share with you a couple of thoughts of his that honestly are so simple when you get this concept, and they're literally going to be the last thing you ever need to know about pairing wines with anything, okay? So we've talked about selecting your cheeses, maybe based on country of origin. So you want to do all Spanish cheeses. And why would you do an all Spanish cheese tasting? You know, maybe 3 Spanish cheeses with some, maybe some imported Spanish honey and some roasted nuts from the region or something like that. Why would you want to do that? Well, maybe you're doing an all Spanish evening at your home. Maybe you made a large paella and you started with some Spanish tapas, right? And so you're just rounding the evening out with a Spanish cheese trio. So there can be a lot of reasons why you'll pick what you pick, but here is going to be the pairing tip that takes you through all pairing tips from this point forward. And there's a reason that I mentioned like doing a whole Spanish night. Christoph's tip for pairing wines with anything, not just cheeses, across the board. His simple formula is what grows together goes together. Okay. What grows together goes together. What is Christoph getting at? What he's suggesting is that if your if your cheese tasting, whether it's a standalone, you're just having some people over and we're going to do 3 to 5 cheeses all from different regions of Spain, or whether you're doing this whole Spanish feast, right, for a whole night, all the wines you select should be Spanish wines. That's part one. How simple is that? If everything we're featuring is the origin is Spain, then the wine's origin should also be Spain. Now, you could get a lot more specific with that idea of what grows together goes together. And you could take a look specifically at the wines that are produced in the same region where your Manchego was produced, okay? And so you could order a wine specific to that region. You could look up what grape varietals come out of specific regions of Spain and make sure that you're pairing up a wine that either is a grape varietal specific to that region, or the next great answer is a blend. So you're going to do cheeses from 3 different corners of Spain. What if you did a single wine that was a 3 grape blend out of Spain? And those types of things are going to be simple for you to find. Now that you've got that on your brain, right? That shelf of 7,000 bottles of red Spanish wine just got narrowed down really quickly, didn't it? Because you can take a look at your phone and figure out, if I'm going to be serving Manchego, what region of Spain is that? What grape varietal is from there? Are there wines specific to that region? Certainly you can see how this would work in France, right? So if we're going to be doing cheeses that are from a specific region, are there local wines? And you better believe there are. But that applies to California. Remember, I mentioned that some of my favorite artisanal creameries are out in California, and you better believe that the West Coast is loaded with great vineyards all the way up into Oregon. There are beautiful Oregon cheesemakers as well. So now, then we got this one little question. Okay, wait a minute. You also have mentioned that you like a dairy that's in Georgia, and Georgia is not a wine growing region of the US, is it? No, it's not. What I will do is take a look at what the cheeses are doing. So let's say that from Sweetgrass Dairy, I'm going specifically with sheep's milk cheeses from Sweetgrass Dairy in Georgia. Now, what I can do is consider regions that are known for sheep milk production, either within the US or in Europe, and pick my wines based on that, right? So I might pick some German wines because there are areas that have much higher sheep production there. I might pick central Italian wines. I keep doing that because Italy is a peninsula and it gets very mountainous through the center, and this becomes all sheep region. So what wines are they, what grape varietals and wines are they producing in kind of those central mountainous regions of Italy? That's going to pair well with my sheep's milk cheeses from Georgia. Another thing that you can consider as well is aging. So in this case, I've got just a standard Gouda, just a basic Gouda. And then I also have this really aged Gouda. Look how different these two look when we add age to it. So one thing that would be really fun for something like this would be to do a young wine, and an aged wine. And I don't know that where it came from would matter so terribly at that point anyway, because now what we're pairing up isn't so much what grows together goes together. We're really looking at comparing new with aged. And that could be a fun way to pair up as well. I also want to mention to you some options to serve with cheeses that are not wine. And then we'll talk about some that aren't alcohol based. So another amazing accompaniment to cheese platters are really crisp, bubbly things. So I used to always say, when in doubt, champagne is kind of what goes with everything, in part because it's bubbly, it's effervescent, and it's dry. So it sort of works as this constant kind of palate cleanser. Now, champagne varietals can vary, and some can have a lot of floral notes to them and things like that. But a really basic brut is a good answer. If that's a good answer, you know what else is? Beers. Really crisp, bright beer is a nice pairing with cheeses. Again, because it has that tendency to kind of the bubbly factor sort of cleanses the palate. But as you know, beers can be very intense in flavors of hops and wheat and barley and all kinds of things. But I would say the same thing. I would pick, if I'm serving German cheeses, I'm going to pick German beers. So I think that basic Christoph tenet is still the thing that just gets us through again and again. If you are wanting to serve cheeses without alcohol, for whatever reason that is in your world, there are so many amazing options. First of all, let's talk about the easy step, which is just de-alcoholized beer or wine. There are actually some nice ones out there, and certainly for something like pairing with cheeses. There's a alcohol-free beer at the grocery store, Klosshauser. I was going to bring it. If I can, I'll take a picture of it. There are a few of them that I like. I was never a fan of big name beer companies anyway, I'm sorry to say. So their non-alcoholic versions aren't going to be high on my list. But there are some really nicely produced. And I'm going to tell you something that's kind of exciting, which is that at least here in the US, what I've noticed is that craft breweries are getting more and more and more prolific with their non-alcoholic beer options. And I think that's great. So you can get all the flavor profile, pair it up with something without any of the alcohol. There are some de-alcoholized wines. A lot of them are very grape juice-like, so not super appealing to wine connoisseurs, and in my opinion, very sweet to be sipping with cheeses. I think they're a little on the too sweet side, but there are a few brands that are really have worked to create a much drier flavor profile that is much closer to that you would have found in a standard wine. One of the brands is Surely, Surely, and you order that online. I don't know that they're in stores. They do a sparkling and a sparkling rosé, and both are very crisp and very dry and would be lovely paired with cheeses. Is there another brand that I like? Surely, I think, is one of the better ones. St. Regis is a brand you can find at a lot of big box stores. I'm not a fan of their de-alcoholized wine, but their champagne, their brut champagne, it is pretty crisp. Would be nice with something like cheeses. Do you know, though, one of my absolute favorite things to serve with cheese is good old classic sparkling mineral water. And I'm talking about like Perrier. There is something about that kind of minerally component. So we still get the effervescence, we still get that kind of bubbly. It does work to sort of cleanse our palate between different cheeses, but there's something about that very minerally background that is earthy enough that somehow just ties into every cheese I've ever paired it with. Classic Perrier. I mean, it's such a great way to go. So that's one of my favorites. As strange as this one sounds, black teas tend to work really well with cheese and charcuterie platters too. Now here we tend to not do hot tea with cheese platters. It's kind of a weird combo, but iced black tea without any sugar in it, served for a luncheon with a cheese course at the end, would be wonderful. Be a fantastic option for you. So what grows together goes together. That can have alcohol or not. And if you are somebody who is making some changes about the way that you're using alcohol, and you wonder sometimes, like, am I ever going to be able to, like, what do I do about a cheese platter if I decide to break away from wine for a while? There's a million wonderful options out there. And just remember, when you get into things like pairing foods with beverages, let's just try to remember what the real primary purpose of getting together and enjoying these foods are. It's about each other and it's about the food first and foremost. The alcohol component coming into it is inconsequential to why you chose these gorgeous cheeses and invited those beautiful friends over to share them with you. So I think that that's one of those things we can try to keep at our forefront of our mind and not get too tied up in the thoughts of what to serve with. But one more thought on the what goes together grows together goes together. Certainly, if I'm going to do, we've talked about like a manchego and a Spanish wine. That's very simple. A gorgonzola. If I'm going to do a big blue creamy gorgonzola, then why don't I do a nice Italian anything, white or red? Italy, right? Here's a really kind of out there concept though, and I love this idea. So this is actually a Roquefort, but big hearty blues like this that have that little bit of shock of astringency right here, and then really warm everything up with that salty blue, incredibly depth of flavor thing that happens. They almost end up in the end tasting like roasted walnuts to me. Roquefort can do that for me. Most Stiltons do that for me. Here's an interesting concept. Think about what those cheeses are served with or ways that they're described. Stilton is often served with a beef course or right after a beef course. Roquefort is often served with beef as well. You've had plenty of steak and blue cheese salads, right? So if what it's served with is beef, then instead of pairing my drink, my beverage to the cheese, what if I pair it with what that cheese pairs with, which is the beef? And now I find myself down in Argentina taking a look at some really interesting Malbecs, right? So you can have a lot of fun with the spinoff of what grows together goes together. And I'll snap a photo of my favorite non-alcoholic beer. It's my favorite for a few reasons, but I think it is delicious. It is crisp. It has a lovely flavor profile. It pairs beautifully with foods. So I'll take a picture of that one so you can see that in here as a reference. And please do just know, if you are for some reason in a program in some level of recovery, non-alcoholic substitutions are not the answer. And I don't want you to think that that's what I'm suggesting. You know where you are with your choices on how you're drinking or not drinking in this world of ours. So please do keep that in mind. But for those that are just taking a break for dietary reasons, health reasons, maybe, a medication will interfere with alcohol, there are some other options out there. But don't forget, everybody, my absolute favorite part of all of this is eating cheese with friends. It has nothing to do with what's in my glass, and a big sparkling Perrier is so refreshing and such a good answer. All right, guys, that is what I've got for you on what to pair with your cheeses. And we'll also talk a little bit about just plate up, making things look beautiful and keeping them simple. That'll be next up. And I hope you're having an absolutely delicious day. And thanks for joining us on the podcast. Don't forget to submit your questions to me, and I'll join you next time for Q&A with Chef A.